is today we're using cat wire for almost everything. And so your ability to terminate the cat wire is critical, and doing it the same way every time properly is the best way of avoiding service calls and redos. I've done, thousands, if not tens of thousands of these terminations over the years, and I'm going to show you how I do them and how I'd strongly recommend you do them. And I would mimic the entire process from tip to toe. I have laid out here the tools that you should have. A pair of scissors is always useful. We call these cigar strippers for some reason, but I have links to all the tools on the website, and you'll need a set of crimpers. You buy good tools, they're going to last you a very long time. Everything you see here is north of 10 years old, and like these crimpers here are probably pushing 20 years old. Buy quality tools always, you won't have to replace them. So the first step is we got to get to the conductors inside of our cat wire. That's where this guy comes in handy. I recommend this guy because it does a great job of stripping the outer jacket, but it doesn't ever come in contact with the actual conductors on the inside. If you nick a cat wire, eventually it will break. It's not an if, it's a when. Could be a year down the road, 5 years down the road. But these are solid core conductors, and if you bump that or nick that conductor at all, eventually it will weaken and break. And then, depending on the conductor, it could cause you a very, very big problem. Anyway, this has a directionality to it. Depending on which way you spin it, it's going to dig deeper or less deep. It only requires a couple of spins, and it creates a little bit of a cut on the jacket. You just give it a bend both ways, and it simply pulls off. Now we've got the conductor. We've gotten to the cat wires individually. There's going to be a zip line that helps you strip if you use it, that needs to be taken out. And inside of the cat wire, we have a center spline. This here is designed to help maintain the spin of the conductors and keep them equally distanced from one another. It's part of the noise rejection characteristics of the wire. I typically will try to pull this center jacket or this center spline a little bit, just sort of stretch it so that when I cut it, you want to cut it nice and close. You're going to take these, you're going to put them back straight, and then you're going to grab the jacket somewhere down here, and you're going to use your hand and sort of pull that way. And now that center spline that we've cut away is actually down in here a little bit, so that this will actually smash in a little bit more. After you've done that step, we're going to take and we're going to untwist these wires individually as such. This takes a little bit of finger dexterity. You'll get there. After a while, it'll become second nature. And you're going to make a little bit of a flower pattern, as we have here. Now, the color coding is a critical element. We've got to make sure that the wires land on the right pins on this end, as well as this end, so that pin 1 lines up to pin 1 through 8 on each side. If it doesn't, then you're going to be cutting this off and doing the whole process over again. So most of the industry uses what's called the 568B standard. I would check some of the reference material on the internet for what A and B is, and who uses what and why. Communication guys oftentimes like to use A standard. It more closely fits with what they're doing, but most of us in the industry are using B, so that's where you're going to see the most, and that's what I recommend you sticking with initially. So now this is the critical part. The preparation of the wire is going to help you get this right the first time and not have to do it again. So the pattern goes orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. I've taken and made that flower into sort of this pattern here. Now I'm going to take my thumb and index, I'm going to hold this real tight here, and I'm going to bend these conductors back and forth with my other hand. I'm going to smash them 2 at a time with my other thumb and index, and I'm bending them back and forth, until I end up with something that's, you know, if you look at the other ones, they're all very still sort of crinkled, whereas that orange and white is now pretty straight. And then we're just going to bend those out of the way. And then we're going to come on the other side and we're going to do the brown and whites, or the brown pair. Same process, exactly the same thing. And as soon as you get that sort of more linear movement to the wire, then we're just going to make sure that they're lined up in the right order. You know, I finished with brown, white, brown, so I'm going to make sure that brown, white, brown is there. And now I'm going to take the centermost, which is the blue pair, and I'm going to do the deal again. Back and forth, back and forth. Your fingers will have to toughen up a little bit for this. You know, I've got kind of wimpy hands, so if I don't do this on the regular, then doing 50 of them in a day is a bummer. And then we got our last pair of the green and whites, or the green pair, I should say. Green, white, green, and then solid green. And again, we're going to reinforce this ordering. Order is critical. Now, we're going to move that thumb and index up a little bit higher, and we're going to bring the blue pair into the middle, nice and flat. And then we're going to invite the green pair in. And I'm going to do that sort of bend motion again, but I'm going to go side to side this time. And without me even holding them, you know, it's pretty much holding its color coding and shape without me even doing anything, right? That's because of how I've prepped the wire. I'm going to bring another pair. In this case, it's going to be the solid orange and the brown, and I'm using that back and forth bend motion to sort of lay the wires in next to one another. And when you do that properly, they're just going to kind of stay mostly on their own. And then you're going to bring the last pair in, and I like doing this little side-to-side motion while running my thumb up. That is bending and warming the wire and sort of laying the wire in next to itself. And the idea is we have to get this wire to sort of hold its position on its own, because we have to slide that wire into this connector. This is an RJ45 connector. You'll recognize this is on the end of every Ethernet cable you've ever touched. But we're going to have to slide these wires into this connector, and we have to hold this ordering. If you prep your wire properly, then it'll hold that ordering, and it won't, wire won't move out of place. Now, a critical step is to have a nice sharp pair of scissors, and we're going to cut. See how this is kind of uneven? You know, the conductors are not lined up nice and straight. We're going to cut that straight across so that, by the way, when you do make that cut, the pieces that you're cutting away will just fly everywhere depending on how you do it. So, you know, if you're working over the top of an amplifier or anything with vents, you don't want to really do that over the top of electronics, because those wires could fall into the electronics, create short problems. You know what I mean? So, this is another critical element. This connector has a retaining clip. See that right there? We're going to want that retaining clip to be away from us. And on this hand, we've got the orange to the left and the brown to the right. And so that's going to take and put the orange-white on pin number 1. And this takes a little bit of finessing, but you should end up with that. This is called an RJ45 easy, which means the wires pass through the connector, and there's a blade on your crimper that will cut off the excess. And so this is a good time to where you want to check to make sure the conductors are exactly where they belong in regards to ordering. Orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. every time. And so we want this to be seated nice and deep. If you look real closely right here, that conductor is, the outer jacket is all the way up inside of this connector. And when we crimp this down, there's a wedge right here that is pushed into the wire, and that's what holds the connector firmly onto the wire itself. And then there are these little spikes that go into the individual conductors, and that's how we get, a connection from point A to point B. So again, we're going to double check, orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. Perfect. It's ready to crimp. And then we just take and crimp. We're going to hold this, and we're just going to bend these back and forth until we can just pull them off. If you look closely, our jacket's well inside, and you'll look and you'll see that wedge is pushed against the outer jacket. All 8 of the tines, the spikes are into our conductors, and this cable is going to be perfect. And if you do it this way every single time, yours will also be perfect. It does sometimes happen, you get a bad batch of these conductors, or these RJ45 connectors. Doesn't happen often, but it can. So if you get failing results with your Resi tester, you may want to look for a new box of these, because I have had these not be good. But for the most part, do this process every time. You won't have to do service calls based on bad connections.